Our second set is about the future of the workspace. We had a lot of discussions in the past. Will there be a paperless office? The paperless office has become something like a synonym for the office of the future. And there have been arguments by people saying, well, there will never be a paperless office before the paperless toilet. And I would invite you to go to Korea, Japan, or the other Asian states and visit toilets without paper, which you can control with a Macintosh app. So there's no reason any longer that there will not be a paperless office in the future. On the second set, I want to welcome some of the speakers you already know. And first of all, and I really loved your sentence, work is not a place, it's what we do. Cheryl, please join me. Cheryl, for those who haven't been here in the first set, is working for Forrester, one of the most important analyst companies in our industry. Well, Pamela, well, you're the favorite for the paperless office with scanning directly into the cloud. And you'll talk a little bit about the capture continuum. I hope there will be no capture continuum, that we get rid of all the paper, because most of the information is born digital, so you will lose all your scanning business. Pamela works for Fujitsu and is one of the heads of AIM International. Somebody new on the panel. Luba, you're prepared? Luba Tacek from OpenText. He looked at me and said, Uli, what are we discussing this? It's already there. Why don't we do it? Well, I'm trying to do it. Last year, I virtualized my complete office. We are completely digital. OpenText is one of the leading vendors who provides these technologies. And Mika Mäkitalo from Finland, he has some new ideas how work could be done in the future, because we are still in the mood of talking about folders, organizing information with all these technologies in paper style. Putting the ideas of paper in a system is not a good idea, you think? So last but not least, Ulrich, if you'd like to join us for IBM, well, the big renowned company between, we should get put in between you. Probably you will buy Mika afterwards in regard to innovation. And I think Ulrich's opinion is leverage what we got, because there's already so much around. And before we think about new things, use the stuff we have. I think I need not to talk about IBM, because everybody knows IBM. These were these marvelous typewriters with a rotating head. So, Rich Medina is the last one. I give him the last 8 minutes because he promised me something like a television show. A TV show, not a sequel, no? Well, unique one, not a sequel. And he wants to show us the workplace of the year 2025, when most of the people who work here around will have no workplace any longer, because our automation industry automated them away. So let's have some insight in the workplace of the future. Who has a paperless office? Yes, mine is paperless, but my financial department is stuffed with paper. And I think that's the reality. We live in a hybrid world. There is not the one electronic world, and there's no longer the paper world, but we are, with our generation, we are stuck in between. And we have these problems of hybrid systems. And all the stuff, getting paper into software, which is technology of the past, and how to handle all these new formats which are not prepared to be stored or managed, like apps, streams, SMS, and other stuff. And I'm glad we have some presentations as well on these topics. And due to the fact that I cut off a little bit of Cheryl in the first session, I would like you to provoke us a little bit, Cheryl. Well, but real provocation so that all the others jump up and say, rubbish. Cheryl's going to talk a little bit about, it's not a place, it's about what we do. And my question to Cheryl is, what is the role of technology then? Because we have been doing work since mankind exists.
Thank you, but I think I actually want to address the issue of the paperless office just before I get into my slides. I came into the business of technology not from a technical perspective, but as an historian. And I think the fundamental challenge that we have not yet solved in the world of paper-free or less paper is really meaningful digital preservation standards. So until we as an industry start working really seriously on consistent adoption of preservation standards for our digital content, my concern is that we're going to have massive gaps in the political, cultural, social history of our institutions and companies. And I think the motivation behind paper-free is admirable, but I think there's still a big unspoken challenge that we haven't really addressed yet. So my premise for this particular short presentation is that the workplace of the future, we have to stop thinking about the concept of place and start thinking about the people and the processes. When we think about location, I mean, work happens in an office. Work happens in the lunchroom. Work happens in remote offices, hotel rooms, airplanes. What we need to make sure is that the organizations and the enterprises that we work with are able to adapt or tailor or move to new technologies that can actually keep up with this new model of work that is geographic independent, that is perhaps location independent, but is focused on the use cases, on the activities, on the requirements of those people and the activities that they need to perform. So again, just even thinking about my work experience over the last 2 days, I've been collaborating on a new research report with my research assistant in Boston. Wi-Fi at the hotel has been down repeatedly. I've had to hand sketch charts for my next report. Tried to fax them from the hotel. It didn't work. So I pulled out my phone, took a picture, and was able to upload that from my phone camera. So now she's working on the design. So that whole concept of work, has changed in multiple iterations, and whether it's online, whether it's offline, whether it's dependence on being connected all the time, that's really where we have an element of risk. So where are the systems that can help us adapt to all of these situations on the fly? So the way that some of my colleagues and I have looked at, what is this area of the work anywhere future, we promote the idea of companies looking for that work-life balance with the goal of a productive and successful workforce. That doesn't necessarily mean you need to segment the work hours from the personal hours, but it means that you need to have the appropriate balance to get things done when they need to get done and have a give and take on both sides. It means that employees are now being measured on what they deliver, not how many hours they spend at a particular desk. So it's about deliverables, it's about objectives, it's about meeting metrics, regardless of how long it takes or how many hours they sit in front of a particular desk. It's about developing management systems to keep employees productive regardless of their location, similar to the example I just described. Working remotely from a hotel, on the road, in an airplane, still getting things done on time with colleagues in collaboration. And it means that organizations need to invest in the tools to support this kind of work from any location, any device, any time, and be flexible enough to have backup or alternative ways of working when one fails or the assumed connectivity isn't actually there. We've heard a lot in the previous session about this concept of systems of engagement and systems of record. And the one thing I think is really important for us to consider, if we look at our traditional content and information management systems as falling in the category of systems of record, and these new collaborative or communication or engagement applications in this level of systems of engagement, what's important is not to set up too black and white of a dichotomy. It's not systems of engagement versus systems of record. It's more of a time continuum. Communications, collaboration, work that we do in these systems of engagement, in fact, over time, need to end up in our systems of record. So we need to make sure that we have technologies that know when information needs to flow from one to the other, what parts of work needs to flow from one to the other, and that goes into the area of information governance, what can be safely disposed of, but what does need to be preserved.
Oh, in time.
I will wrap up there.
You fear the whiskey price? Great. I think what an end user interest is not how we call the system. If it's a system of collaboration, of participation, of record, of ECM or whatever. Is it not in a way that we need to have one intuitive user interface where all these technology complex stuff is hidden so that the end user need not to know what a system is?
I think that's a really important point, and I think that the fact that many of the systems that we've been using in the ECM or records management space over the last few years have been difficult for users to adopt. Many mouse clicks, menu items to navigate, many folder structures to navigate to be able to file or organize or categorize documents. The user experience, I think, is where the big area of disruption and innovation really needs to happen if we're going to move forward into the next generation of whether we call it ECM or EIM. And we need to learn, in my opinion, from what we're seeing in the areas of web content management and that whole area of customer engagement, using data, using analytics to understand how people engage, how they click, what they respond to, what they use, and being able to build that into more of an iterative approach to the ECM applications that we roll out to our users.
Well, Rich, how does your idea of participation fits in this?
Well,
is participation the same like a system of engagement, or
so
it's just other terminology, that's DocuLab's terminology, and that other CAM terminology?
So what we found, what's very exciting, if you see at the bottom, my name is Jeffrey Moore, and I approve this message. One of the things that Jeffrey Moore and AIM has really done really well is to introduce and popularize the notion of systems of engagement being different than systems of record, with systems of engagement being all the new collaborative, people-heavy, exciting stuff, and systems of record being the more structured, system-laden type technologies. But we found that to be too fluffy, not usable. It's a good first approximation for the new stuff versus the old stuff, but it gets you into problems when you're trying to plan and implement. So, for example, it seems people get confused and think that if you're doing that, the opposite of systems of engagement is workflow or process management, and that's not the case. You can have orchestration of processes and a lot of collaboration. Or they think that systems of record are the records management risk-reducing systems. But that's not the case. They're also the highly structured line of business processes and so on. So we introduced participation management to try to get that third dimension of human involvement in addition to the content and the process activities. Long-winded
by the way, Mika, is that as well your point of view? Well, coming not from America, coming from Finland, where everything is more cool, do you have a new vision? Because I hear only the old terms. I hear terms which are designed to confuse the end user so that he not buys the software. What's your vision?
I think the terms and acronyms are more for the industry. As you mentioned earlier, end users and customers are not so familiar with those terms. They are not looking for ECM solution, EIM solution or something. They have some business process problem they want to solve. And we have to be able to talk about that problem, how to solve it, not about we have this great ECM software or something like that.
Yeah. Would you like to use your slides to show how you would do it? Hmm? 7 minutes and like touch.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'm going to talk about dynamic content management. You know, some time back it was thought that when we have all documents in digital format, that will solve all the problems companies are facing. But we all know that that isn't or wasn't the case. One thing really also shapes the market is that the amount of information is skyrocketing. We'll have 44 times more information in 10 years. And yet, according to many studies, end users don't have access to the right information they should have. So guess what kind of business decision they're going to make if the amount of information grows and they don't have just access to the right data. And also, unfortunately, many ECM systems are based on old folder-based architecture. That is, of course, good for us, but it's a pity for the market. But dynamic content management allows a much better solution approach, since documents and information can be accessed by what it is instead of where it's stored. And this also brings some benefits for the topic of unstructured and structured data, because with metadata you can have some structure with unstructured content. We all know what happens here. You have some folder structure and you are working with some document and you have to store it somewhere. It's a proposal for a customer with certain projects. And the question is where you store that, because there's many aspects with that document. And the question is, are you 100% sure that you can find your former colleague's 3-year-old proposal? If not, you have a problem with your systems. So, as I said, dynamic content management is based on what the information is rather than guessing where it is stored. As in the previous slide, it's quite easy to know that I'm working with a proposal for a certain customer with certain product or project. And if an individual doesn't know what the document is he or she is working with, I think the company has more serious problems than the system itself. You know, if you wanted to listen music some time back with your computer, you had to create a folder structure. How many here are using iTunes or iPhone? So what happens there? You don't have to worry about folders. The device knows it's music, and you can browse your songs by album, by artist, by genre, by playlist. And in dynamic content management, this is exactly what happens to your business documents and business information. You don't have to worry about folders and places. Those appear where you want them to be seen. You can, for example, browse your documents by customer, by project, by sales rep, and so on. And this definitely means that users have quick access to the right data they need. There can be multiple routes, and yet they find the same document, and it's the latest version. And then, of course, the business decisions they are making are much better. And what is also important that with metadata, you can easily have right content in the context. You can browse relationships from the proposal. You can easily access the information of the company, customers, your sales reps, and so on. And as I said, users love this approach. And in the end of the day, it's the end users who really decide if the company has value on their system purchase. As if they don't want to use it, what happens? There's no ROI for the system. But on the other hand, if they love it and they are using it, the organization will get full benefits of the system. So focus on end users and go for dynamic content management. Good?
Great, thank you. We all love folders because we were raised with paper folders. And you promise the folderless office. There are a lot of people running around and talking about gamification. And you brought the example with the use of information in an iPhone or something like that. Will we all live in a gamification office in the future, where Office has a functionality of an iPhone? Is that your vision?
Something like that might happen, but I would also comment about paperless office. I think the goal is not to have a paperless office. Is it to have efficient processes? Because that leads ultimately to paperless office. Mm-hmm. So that I think it's important aspect. Good.
I have a quick comment on that. I really like the concept of moving away from folders and traditional things. I think the real disruptive element of this discussion here, or highlighting the disruptive elements in first the industry and then for the workplace, is the fact that early stages of enterprise content management, we really modeled our traditional filing structure and our paper behavior, and that's how we model the systems. But I think we're really on we're changing, and there's really a paradigm shift going on in a way that all of these structures are going away. And as a result of that, technologies like content analytics or e-discovery really enable the user to ignore traditional filing structures. The relevance of metadata is still there, but I think it's going down. And so the point is really find something and have information on your fingertip when you need it in the context of a decisioning process.
Well, Ulrich, we are now killing metadata, we are killing records management, we are killing folders. Pam, what's your opinion? Will there be a document after you captured it? Huh? Before we kill everything.
Thank you. I'm sure many of you will not recognize this individual. His name is Jimmy Hoffa. He was a major mobster. He was the head of a union in the United States. He was known for his criminal activities. In 1975, he mysteriously went missing, and today we still have not found him. It was also in 1975 that in a Business Week article was the first prediction of the paperless office. It is now 38 years later, and we have neither found Jimmy Hoffa or the paperless office. I'd like to substantiate that with some recent findings from an AIM survey. I'm not going to go through all these stats because I know we're very short on time. But I will tell you this, and Andrew mentioned it in the first set. About 41% of organizations indicated that paper is decreasing in their organization. However, 59% say that paper is still the same. The amount of paper in their business processes is either the same or is increasing. I'm going to skip this slide. I'm going to skip this one. I think this is the most significant finding of the AIM study on winning the paper wars. The study actually asked, how many of your key document or form-based processes have you captured enabled? 23% of the respondents said they had not captured enabled any of them. Okay, so let's do this. We're going to use 5 as the barometer. If 5 is the barometer, if organizations have, if they've captured and enabled 5 or less of those processes as still having a long way to go to be paper-free, 64% of large organizations have captured and enabled less than 5 processes, and 77% of small to medium businesses have captured and enabled less than 5 business processes. So the bottom line is we have not achieved the paperless office. Maybe we've achieved a paperless office or a less paper office. Scanning is definitely reducing the amount of paper in organizations, and organizations are desperately trying to capitalize on documents born digitally, but somehow information still ends up on paper. As a result, it is literally clogging our business processes. It is delaying responses to customers, patients, clients. It is adding to our operational costs, and it is impairing compliance. I will say this, however, it is no longer just about the paperless office. It's about all content, whether it be electronic, email, social, instant messaging. The volume of data is growing at a rate of 50% per year, or more than doubling every 2 years. So the solution remains to capture all of that content and to transform it into a valuable resource. Capture is a combination of hardware and software, and it remains the critical on-ramp to enterprise content management. Where capture ends off, enterprise content management takes over and manages, stores, and preserves that content, regardless of format. If there are 2 words that I would use to describe capture's relevance over the past 2.5 decades, I would use the 2 words, renewed relevance. Bear with me. I live in Florida. I would liken capture to a chameleon. Many people believe that chameleons change colors to disguise or to camouflage themselves, but actually they change colors to adjust to the ever-changing conditions, to the changing landscape. Capture, like a chameleon, has continued to change to meet the ever-changing needs of our industry. Reflect with me for just a few moments. We started off where everything was sent, all paper was sent to a centralized location to be captured on high-volume production scanners. We scanned to archive, or we used OCR to extract all the data. Quickly, we learned the value of extracting key pieces of information to automate and fill index information. Quickly, organizations learned the value of moving capture to the point of origin, which has become known as distributed capture. We paired workflow with scanning to scan to process or to transact. We further leveraged recognition to extract more critical data to pass off to key line of business applications, such as enterprise resource planning and customer relationship management. Today, we're using capture to automatically classify documents. Today, it's about all content, whether it be email, electronic documents, fax. We're not only content agnostic, we're device agnostic. We are supporting architectural changes. You can scan to the cloud. We have on-premise support. There's SharePoint support. And now we're leveraging recognition for semantic analysis to provide better predictive insights and better business intelligence. Capture is no longer about the single dimension of capturing paper in 1 or 2 locations. It's about capturing all content. It's become the multi-channel distributed on-ramp for all content. Going forward, capture will further incorporate advanced analytics, more mobile solutions, business process management, and tighter integration with enterprise applications, which will extend capture's role in support of big data, on-demand capture, and adding value to enterprise applications.
Pam, you're disappointing me.
Why?
Well, why? It's very easy. Fujitsu has been one of the companies which forced on this paperless 2013 initiative. You have always been with your company the one who said, hey, we are striving for the paperless office. And on this year, I think 24th of October, we have for the 4th time the World Paper Free Day, where Fujitsu always waved their flag. And now you say, oh, there's no paperless office. Will there ever be a paperless office?
I think the more that we move towards telework to telecommuting, I think then we're going to start to see it. And telework is really the wave of the future. In the United States, it's actually predicted that 40% of the government will be teleworking by the year 2020. So we're moving towards it, but we have a long way to go.
Yeah. Oh, well, Cheryl, in your research, I think you did some work as well on the impact of cloud, SaaS, mobile. Aren't we forced to go for the paperless office when we go mobile, when we are on the cloud? Do we have any other chance?
No, I think that's a really good point. I mean, as we get more distributed and decentralized in our work processes, then cloud potentially has that role of being the central repository, if you want to use that term. Maybe cloud is the systems of record to support our distributed mobile workforce, where our systems of engagement, in fact, could be paper sitting face-to-face in a coffee shop collaborating on a new graphic or a new roadmap for him. So I think there's changing ways of looking at these concepts as engagement and record, and maybe even flipping how we actually rely upon them. So if we are looking at supporting that distributed workforce and documents, images, email are being moved or archived into a cloud environment for easy access, easy discovery, perhaps that concept of the engagement collaboration is happening more in the physical world.
Well, the argument on the table, but what I'm missing here is nobody of you so far talked about the user, the office worker. We have been thinking about the workflow, we have thinking about paper, we have talking about some functionality, technology, cloud and here, but where's the worker? Is he still there, or did we automate everything, Rich?
No, the worker's still very much there, and what's been happening in the past 5 years is not that they've been edged out in knowledge work, as in manufacturing processes, but now there's the opportunity to enable them by providing these technologies to a broader swath of people, but also being able to let them make more creative decisions and interact more deeply, given now that they have the technologies to assist them in doing it.
Is there a chance for solutions where we need not to do all this traditional stuff with folders and documents, just talk to each other, software analyzes what we are talking, creates records of it, and we do what we did from the beginning, because if we look on the history of mankind, 99% of the time we were cooperating and working, we only had the voice. We only had audio. And we are still talking about paper documents, files, and digital. Will there be a renaissance of doing everything audio and leaving all the other stuff to systems? What's your opinion?
Oh, well, you definitely need artifacts. We're doing a lot more complicated things right now, right? For 99% of our existence, we didn't have flush toilets either, or plumbing. Our processes are a lot more complex now. So you need some of the assistance of artifacts to memorialize contracts and so on, and to interact with machines and such. So you definitely will have some of those items. Likewise, one of the things to look at, very interesting, is one of the reasons for folders has been to chunk information into usable forms. And so what's really interesting is, folders were an impediment because they were paper bound and so on, but they also usefully chunked information for humans, but also to chunk up the work. And so what's very interesting, I'm looking forward to seeing what M-Files and OpenText and IBM are going to do, is how they will chunk up the information if the folder metaphor is going to go by the wayside.
Cheryl, in your analysis work, did you ask for this natural work with information, or did you always ask for this technical way to work with information? Because speaking, looking in the eyes, developing trust, well, in Germany, you can do contracts by shaking hands. Will we return to this? Or did Forrester never look in this opportunity?
So I would say that we look at that opportunity less so when we cover ECM per se, but when we cover things like our customer engagement and our human resource engagement type of practice areas. These are absolutely the kinds of things that we look at, is less on the technology side, but more on, how do these work activities happen? How do you serve the needs of your users as well as serve the needs of the organization? But I kind of want to go back to the concept of the folder once again, because how many people here know the term skeuomorph? I only learned it a few months ago. It's a design concept, and it became really hot in the tech blogging news a few months ago when Apple was about to announce a new iOS 7. And it's basically a design principle that carries over the representation of something in its physical manifestation into the world of digital. So if you look at your old iPad or iPhone, when you look at the bookshelf, it actually is a bookshelf that has wood grain and physical items on it. I kind of look at the ECM and records management systems that kind of grew out of the 1990s really as skeuomorphs. What they've done is basically taken the file cabinets, the folders, the little trucks, and put this into a digital representation as a way to bridge from the old to the new. Well, I think now that we've done this for 20, 30 years, is it time to kind of let go of that training wheels of the physical representation in our digital repositories and look at a new model, such as metadata and analytics?
Yeah. Ulrich, just a question to you. IBM provides really a lot of power with new systems like Watson. And you exhibit Watson here and promise, well, Watson is as well the ultimate solution for documents. When will be the time when we have a Watson suit in my jacket where I don't need data, where I don't need documents, where just my suit documents what I'm doing with work and contracting and all the other stuff? What's the release plan for this feature?
I'm not that much of a prophet to predict that, but Watson is real. I think that's a good point. And I think many of the folks here do know that at IBM we're taking the Watson technology, which was not built to win a game show, absolutely not the case, into real life solutions in fraud detection, in healthcare and in other industries. And so we're really on the path. I don't know when we'll have the suit, but definitely we're charting the path there.
Is natural language an issue?
That's part of the solution, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think.
Is automatic translation an issue? Can I talk to Mika in Finnish in a week? Is there the Babelfish? Is there Douglas Adams 42? Is that the future of the office?
We speak English here all together. So I don't know if that is really relevant, but natural language certainly is an important point.
Yeah. Luba, you have been working for 20 years on the paperless office with software. Would you like to show us your vision, or did you forget it to put it on your slides?
So you said to be provoking, so I'm going to provoke you right now. I actually think that the paperless office is exactly the wrong discussion, because to me it sounds like the paperless office is some kind of goal, some kind of objective, whereas in reality it's a side effect. The objective is to get my work done, and it's the one objective that I myself and my organization are sharing, right? We just often have a very different opinion about how we actually do that. Case in point is consumerization, where we as users, we as employees are discovering that there are tools that actually allow us to get stuff done in a much easier way using consumer-grade technology. Well, our companies don't always like them because they believe that the consumer technologies may not be as secure, they may not be as compliant, they may not be as corporate approved as they would like that. And so this is always about a dilemma. Now that dilemma starts with the point that, we've kind of reached a tipping point where for years, for decades, IT was all about providing access to information. And today we've accomplished it. We have access to information. We all have so much information, it's growing out to our ears. And actually the problem has become completely the opposite. We actually need to have the right information to be able to do something useful with that, right? And we are only scratching the surface of it. And when we are talking about the information management industry, to me, that's actually the primary goal that we are trying to accomplish. And again, whether it's by eliminating paper or by eliminating folders or by eliminating metadata or by eliminating computers altogether or employees altogether, it kind of doesn't matter. It's all about we need to change our ways in order to get stuff done. So one of the things I like to point out is that, we are actually transforming the way we communicate to each other in the enterprise environment. And I have two examples, very famous examples. One is Stephen Elop of Nokia, well, now Microsoft, as of 2 weeks ago, when he made that big announcement about new strategy a couple of years ago, and it was this really long email. And I can guarantee you that out of the Nokia employees, only very few actually read all the way to the end of that email, because let's face it, we don't read long emails anymore. Nobody reads long emails anymore, just like nobody reads white papers, right? My other example is Eric Schmidt, the CEO, 10th CEO of Google, announced that he was stepping down, and he did it on Twitter, right? So he actually managed to make that announcement within 140 characters, which I thought was kind of cool, right? So that's becoming a new way of communicating, and it's becoming much more acceptable. We all agree probably that learning has changed, and to me it's fascinating that even in the enterprise we start actually accepting the fact that, a manual is not always the answer, and you can learn a lot from a video or a media file, which is kind of a new way of approaching things. When I look at my 10-year-old son, that's his first natural reaction to learn anything. A school problem, he goes to YouTube and he finds a YouTube video about that, which I think is very cool, and it's exciting to see that that has entered the enterprise. And to me, this is what actually gets us to paperless office. Not the fact that we are talking about paperless office. It's the fact that we are accomplishing something in a very different way. User experience, I think that there is a big fallacy, right? We are right now confusing user experience and simplicity. And we like to say that, something that is simple has a great, compelling user experience. Well, it's easy. When it's got only 2 functions, you have 2 buttons, and so the user experience is very simple. When it's got 200 functions, it's a little harder, right? So let's not confuse that. Where I get excited about user experience is when we actually start thinking about different ways of interacting with the information, interacting with the technology, and interacting with each other. And I think that, we started seeing some of that initially with some of the new technologies, such as the Microsoft Kinect, where we can have gesture technology, and we see some very exciting use cases for that, but we are way at the beginnings, and natural speech is a great example, right? Siri from Apple, and some of the technologies from IBM and other companies, that's a way to actually start changing how we interact, because let's face it, we've been using QWERTY keyboard for 140 years. It's been designed to slow us down, to make us less optimal, right? We've been using mouse for about 30 years now. It's the same thing. So there hasn't been a lot of exciting technology there, but it's coming. And I believe that this is where the intentions of users and corporations are aligned, even though I don't think the corporations quite understand what they're actually trying to do here. I am going to skip over this one. I think that the last one that I want to point out is the whole notion of security, where, let's face it, security is not a solved problem today. And this is where the interest of users and the corporations actually is very different, right? People don't care particularly about security, right? If it was up to me, I probably wouldn't have a password on my PC at work, right? I mean, who cares? Now, my company thinks very differently about it, and they make me create a 10-digit password and then make you change it once a month, and it's actually really, really annoying, right? But the reality is that, the security model that we have in place today is trust-based security model, meaning that the company effectively trusts me that I will do the right thing with the information that I have. And I can decide that, I'm going to copy it on a thumb drive and give it to every one of you. And the company has no control over that, which means there is no real security that actually controls the information. And so I believe that the future of the workplace is solving this dilemma in the enterprise, where the users are trying to do the same thing as the organization. We are all trying to get our job done, but the way we do it is not always the same, right? The users care about certain things and care less about others. The organization has different priorities. Trying to find the right balance is actually the right solution. And to me, that's the future of the workplace.
Thanks for bringing back the user again, because you said some very important things it's my opinion. One is trust. We cannot do everything by technology. We must trust in our employees as we did the last 1,000 years. The second thing is the new technologies go out of control of centralized administration. Everybody has been talking about bring your own device. It's a laugh. Bring your own network. All the security you built in your systems over decades is gone. And if you then think about the mobile or the home workstation, without new technologies and discipline, the mobile office will not work. And the third thing is, what I found very interesting is, if you have a so-called simple interface, which we find in apps, it only hides a complexity which we hardly understand. Because all this technology we are working with is so complex and so intransparent, but suggests to us it's easy because we only have few buttons. And that leads as well users today to the idea everything is easy, I need not care, I don't need no education. If I can handle an iPhone, I can handle business process management. And probably that's the wrong expectation which young users have if they come to a company which still has a split screen with host characters and a black and white image aside.
I think you are exactly right, and in fact, the users, like I say, they have a very different view of how the task at hand should be accomplished, and for the organization, there are rules, there are ethical rules, there are legal rules, there are compliance rules that constrain about how we can do certain things, and so, like it or not, they have to force the users to do certain steps, even though it actually seemingly doesn't accomplish anything for the users themselves. And so the points that you are raising with education, with sort of the attitude is a valid point. But I don't think that's going to be permitted. As long as we have states and as long as we have laws, we will have rules that we have to obey by.
Well, until the states are called Google, we have some time. By the way, Ulrich, how is IBM dealing with this? Did you prepare something for us? Don't worry, you're the last, you get your time.
Thank you. So I wanted to maybe bring together the discussion that we've been having around change of the industry and the workplace, actually. And one of the things that we've been talking about, and actually when you walk around in the show floor, you see that many of the capabilities and a lot of the signage here is defined by some level of capabilities. We at IBM, we claim we have, a very broad portfolio, the broadest maybe. The point really is, and we talked here on the panel about the concept of, you just come here, I think that's a good thing to talk about, the concept of systems of record and systems of engagement. And what that actually brings along is, so the introduction of the understanding of systems of engagement is that ECM is not just about cost. That's what the systems of records are. They cost money, you put in infrastructure, and then just create a digital landfill. You store stuff away and it sits there for 100 years, and you might not touch it. System of engagement turns that around and says the information that we have in an organization has value. It allows us and it supports us to make decisions, and it allows us to make our business better, to be better with the customer ultimately. So that's the point of generating revenue versus generating cost. What we need to do that, and to elevate the view from the basic set of capabilities, is really to leverage solutions, because the concept of systems of engagement introduces the line of business, into the conversation. It's not just an IT discussion anymore. It's a discussion around who leverages ECM capabilities to improve the claims management, to engage with the customer. And so we build and we drive solutions that leverage a pattern of discover, recognize, act. Here are a couple of those solutions that we're building, that we're driving along with our partner community. And I would like to have either in the remaining minutes here or in the next slot to really talk about what those solutions are and how they can actually increase profitability and quality of work and how they change the workplace, because that's what ultimately changes the workplace, that users don't interact with basic systems, do manual search, find their documents, file them away manually, but interact with content in the context of a solution that does all the finding, the storing, and all the management in the background.
Is it man or is it machine? Who's in the lead?
The customer is.
Now, the real problem is, I think, of all of us who are engaged in this industry for several years, we always tend to discuss in functionality. We tend to discuss in systems. We are nearing, thanks to Lubor, to the end user, but the general question behind is, what is the character of work? How will work will be done? And what will be the role of man? Is it only the person with the two buttons who say, well, this information is correct, or well, I signed this contract with one of the buttons.
Yep.
Where will the work end? Is there work for man?
Let me pick this up. I think we started this discussion in our last round. There was a lot of focus on what is the definition of the industry, what is included, what are the traditional elements, is it imaging, is it archiving, and how has it evolved, sorry about that. But I think the point really is, the real question is, what are the solutions that users need? And here's just a list, and it's more or less a random list that we prioritize, and we can expand the list. And the idea is that underneath those solutions, we just pull all the technology that's needed. And it can be archiving, it can be capture, it can be content analytics, all the other capabilities that we talked about. And I think that's really what's significant, and I think where we as a panel can really make a difference and talk about the change in the industry.
Thanks, Ulrich. But what I miss from you all is, where's the vision? Where's the vision? Where's the vision? A lot of stuff, as you said on your own, I think Lou said the same. Everything is here, use it. We are trying to use it. But the implication, what we're doing, why we're using it, how we're using it, is still not there. There was only one presentation which had a really focus on the user, and there was another one who contributed a little bit, who was the focus on work. So, the chance to save the panel with this topic is on Rich Medina with the Office 2025. And it will be very interesting. Where is the employee? Is there work? How will work look like? Or will we all be lying on the beach?